I'd like to welcome everybody out to our class today, How to Really Start Your Business in Nevada. My name is Mike Bindrup. I will be your instructor for today with the Small Business Education Program, UNR Extension. And we're happy to have you join us today to learn more about starting your business and really all of the details that you need to know to begin your operations here in Nevada. Okay, so our agenda today, like I said, we have a lot we're going to cover. We're going to talk about creating our business entities in Silverflume, applying for our DBA, an EIN number, applying for a DUNS number. We're going to talk about local licensing. We're also going to talk about special permits and zoning, bank loans, pre-opening budgets and projections for your business before you launch, and then marketing and launching your business. So we'll jump right in. So creating our entity. In Nevada, where all entities are formed are on the state level. And the portal that we have for our state is called Silverflume. And you can find it at this web address, nvsilverflume.gov. And Silverflume is a very robust portal which allows us to file for our entity if we need to form a corporation, if we need to form an LLC, a partnership, if we're going to do any sort of corporate filings of that sort, it happens on NV Silverflume. We also do our Nevada Common Business Registration there. We can get registered and set up with the sales tax authorities, and we file for a state business license there as well. So you have to go through Silverflume. You can do some of it via paper if you're very old school and want to do it, but I'd recommend that you jump right onto Silverflume and do it. It has everything in one place that we need to start off. And when you start into Silverflume, this is what it looks like. Nevada's first stop for business registration. Go to nvsilverflume.gov. And first thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating an account. You're going to be registering on the portal. So you'll enter your email and a password, and then boom, you have an account. It's that simple. It's just like signing up for any other type of service. The state's made it very efficient and very easy to work with. If anybody else remembers back in the day when we had to do this by hand, it's completely automated today to do this. It's so easy and so very user friendly compared to what it was prior to having this. So Silverflume came into existence about 10 years ago, and it's made just a world of difference for everyone. So we register, and in here we're going to go through today how to form an LLC. Okay, so when we click on it, we go start. There's something called the Articles of Organization. When you're filing for an LLC, you have what's called Articles of Organization. If you're incorporating, it's called Articles of Incorporation that you would file with the state, okay? And so you hit start for the process, and it's gonna ask you, what type of business are you going to start, right? You're gonna be a general partnership, you're gonna be a sole proprietorship, you're gonna be a domestic corporation. By domestic, it means that you're based in Nevada. Foreign is considered any corporation that's incorporated outside of Nevada. Now, if I have a Florida-based LLC and I'd like to register that LLC in Nevada and do business in Nevada, I need to register as a foreign entity in the state of Nevada. And if you go through the filings in Silverflume, it's all public information, so you can look up any company that's there. You'll be able to see what they have and where they're registered at, and who their registered agent is and such. So we also have domestic limited liability company here, and so that's what we're going to be forming today, as a domestic limited liability company.
Mike, we were talking yesterday about how important was for the owner that's going to start a business to first think about what kind of entity they need to create, right?
Absolutely.
Because this is only the registration portion, but before you register your company, we were discussing yesterday that we really need to know what kind of entity do you want to open. So
Yes.
we do have videos for that. I know we're not gonna go in detail about entities today, but we do have videos, and when I send you the slides, I will provide the links for those videos, okay?
Thank you, Rita. Yes, and that is a very good point. You must provide, you need some guidance when you're going into this. You need to talk to your CPA, to your tax advisor, to your attorney perhaps, because different structures are suited for different types of businesses and different types of operations. And also what it boils down to is you have taxation issues and you have liability issues, okay? If you're a sole proprietor, the liability is all on you as a business owner. You are the business. So if the business gets sued, you get sued personally, okay? We try to avoid that because we're a very litigious society in America. Chances are you will get sued in your business, right? In my business, I got sued 8 times in 8 years, okay? And I always tell people 4 of them were completely legitimate. We had a problem and I said, sue the company, then we'll work it out in court, right? Which we did. But 4 of them were completely frivolous lawsuits too. Yeah, so in fact, I got named with a co-defendant with Trump, former President Trump's company and Disney in the same lawsuit. It's crazy. We were like the little guy. And I was like, horrible situation. Well, I'll tell you about that later.
Yes.
Anyway, you have to make sure because corporations and LLCs have the liability is limited to what is inside of that corporation or that LLC, right? And so just like if I own shares of Coca-Cola, if Coca-Cola gets hit with a lawsuit, even though I'm an owner of Coca-Cola, I don't get hit with they can't come after me personally for that. The liability rests within the entity. So that's the reason we have these entities. But certain types of entities are positioned in certain ways for taxes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too as we go on.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to let you know that we have one person who's going to open a business in energy healing.
Energy healing. Okay, great.
Yeah, just to let you know.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, so that's the 2 issues you have to really think about before you form your entity is taxation and liability.
Okay. Thank you.
So in this case, we've decided we want to be a sole member LLC. Okay. So when we come into here, the first question they'll ask us, and when we file this articles of organization, the cost is $75 to file this one-time fee. You file it the first year. Okay. If you have a name you've already reserved with the state, you can pay a fee and reserve your name. If you say, I've got such a great name, I want to just reserve this. You can reserve it on Silverflume, and there's a fee to doing that. If you've reserved your name, you go down here and type in your reservation ID. If not, you can click here and you can search for a name. You have to pick a name that is not in use in the state as an entity. Okay, so if you pick a name and it's already in use, you have to pick another name to be able to do it. So it'll tell you if you can register that or not. So you go through that search there with the Secretary of State's office. Okay, so we found a name. We're calling this Sano Services LLC. We type that in, and down here it says the name is available. Perfect. All right, let's register this thing. So, articles of organization. So one of the crazy questions you get asked when you're filing for an LLC, and we get people asking us all the time because you hit this point, you go, I don't understand what this means. It'll ask you, are you a series or a restricted limited liability company? Check these boxes if you are a series or if you're a restricted LLC, okay? Series and restricted LLCs, 99% of all LLCs are not series or restricted LLCs, okay? Chances are, if you're a series or a restricted, you're having an attorney set this up for you, okay? A series LLC simply means that you have a series of assets that you're putting into an LLC. These are used commonly in real estate. If you own 22 rental properties, instead of having 22 LLCs, you can form a series LLC and you put the 22 assets into the LLC. Now, normally everything that's in one LLC, the liability is inside of that LLC. So everything that's in there is liable for each other as well, right? So if you have a lawsuit that hits one property, it can come against another property because it's all within an LLC. However, a series LLC was designed for that purpose. So if you have these 22 rental properties, You have a series LLC, which has to be set up by an attorney, and there's a very specific legal language that's put in where the assets are separated as a series of assets, but their liability is not commingled. Okay. So, and a restricted liability, a limited liability company just has rules on when owners can take investments out, and there's restrictions to certain things. Okay. Typically used in estate planning. These two things, like I said, you probably won't do. So do not select these boxes, and then we'll just hit next and move ahead. Registered agent. Okay. A registered agent is your point of contact in the state of Nevada. It's if you get sued, your LLC gets sued, it's who gets that lawsuit sent to them, right? Who is your point of contact? You may live in another state, but if you're doing business in Nevada, you have to have a point of contact here. And so who can be your registered agent? You can be your own registered agent as long as you have a physical address in the state of Nevada, a physical mailing address. It cannot be a PO box. It can't be like a UPS store box. It has to be an actual physical mailing address in Nevada. If you have that, you can be your own registered agent. Who else can be your registered agent? Your brother-in-law can be your registered agent. Your business partner can be your registered agent. Your grandmother can be your registered agent. Anybody who will accept that responsibility. And literally it's the person that's the point of contact if you get sued. You can also pay a company to be your registered agent. There are registered agent services. Attorneys, CPAs are frequently registered agents as well. They're registered with the state, and that's what they do. Typically, registered agent fees, if you want to pay someone to be your registered agent, you're looking at probably $100 to $400 a year for that option. And all the person does is when they get the lawsuit, they call you on the phone. They say, "Hey, you got sued. I'm putting this in the mail to you," or I'm gonna scan this and email it to you, or whatever. So don't think you have to have somebody else as that required registered agent, but you can do it yourself. There's not an issue with it. The only thing you need to do is you need to communicate any official things that come from the state have to be communicated with the ownership of that LLC. And if you're the owner, you kill two birds with one stone, right? So we go ahead and we put the name of the registered agent in here. If they are a commercial registered agent, so they do this for a living, they have a business that does registered agent services, or they're an attorney or CPA or somebody that's handling that, they'll be in the system and you can find them. If not, you can put them in there. We went ahead and put, in this case, we have Juan as our registered agent. So we put Juan in there, and we update and put all the information in, and then hit next. So once our registered agent is in there, the registered agent has to certify that they accept to be the registered agent. Okay, so there's a place in here where it's a certificate of acceptance. And if you nominate somebody else to be your registered agent, they have to certify that they accept to be your registered agent as well. Okay, so you put your registered agent in, you get that done. That's the point of contact. So if somebody pulls your corporate docs, if somebody goes on Silverflume and looks you up as to who owns the company, where it is, and they're looking to make a point of contact with you, that will go through the registered agent. Just so you know, that's public information. It's out there, and there you go. Okay, members versus managers. LLCs are governed and owned by members by statute. However, members can elect managers to manage their affairs in the LLC. Something that's very common in this is if I'm a home builder, for example, I'm a small home builder developer, I'll form an LLC for my new property called Meadows Condos. So the Meadows Condos is this LLC I form. I have investors that pay money so that we can develop this. Each investor puts in a certain amount of money. All those investors are members of this LLC, and Mike's construction company is going to be the manager of this LLC. So this Meadows condo place that we have gets off the ground, and although we have many members, they don't have to manage any of the affairs, because we'll handle the management of the affairs, because we're doing the building and we'll manage the property and all that. So you can elect to have a manager to do this. There's also, if The manager is also a member of the LLC. They're called a managing member. You have to designate a managing or a manager or a managing member for that LLC. And this is the person that's going to sign these documents, okay, digitally here as soon as we do this. And by the way, this process will take, if you've got everything already set up and all the stuff, the data entry for it should take you less than a half an hour to get done online, probably 15, 20 minutes if you're fast going through here. It's just if your name's already in here, if you have to type some stuff in, it's a pretty streamlined process. And then away you go and you're instantly available in this system. So you're going to be a manager or a managing member. We're going to go ahead and put Juan down as our managing member. Now with this, we've got these articles of organization are filed. Our next step is we're going to start our filing of what's called our initial list. And it's your initial list of members and managers. So every year we're required by the state to update the ownership of our entity. Whether we're a corporation or whether we're an LLC or a partnership, we need to designate who the owners are. The state does not care about percentage of ownership. They don't care how you're splitting the money. They don't care anything about the money. They only care about people, okay? So who is involved in this organization? They don't care if somebody owns 4% of the company, 12%, 22%, or 100%. They don't care. All they care about is who is actually there present, right? So the first year you file an initial list of members and managers, right? In a corporation, you file your initial list of officers. And then each additional year, you file an annual list of members and managers. And it's the same price. And so when you start the filing process, here's our initial list. And the cost for this is $350, okay? So it's when you break down the fees included in this $350, it's what's called a state business license. Every entity in the state of Nevada is required to have a state business license unless you are exempt. And I want to point out, we have a video that explains the rules to exemption, which are pretty simple, right? To be exempt from the state business license, you have to be a sole proprietor that is also home-based, and you had less than the poverty level income in Nevada, which I think is around $34,000 to date. You have to check my math on that, but it's under $40,000. Now, if you're a startup company and you're home-based and you're sole proprietor, you didn't have any earnings last year, so you're under that $34,000 or $40,000 mark. And so, yeah, you do qualify for the exemption from this state business license if you're a sole proprietor. However, if you're an LLC, but you're home-based and you made less than that and you're a startup, you still have to pay the state business license. If you're a sole proprietor and you rented a space, so you have a commercial lease that you moved into, you're not home-based. Okay, so you still have to pay the $200 state business license fee. So you have to meet all the three of those conditions to be exempt from that. There are a couple other exemptions as well, if you might qualify for that, but just plan on paying that. Everybody pretty much pays it. It's included in that $350 price. So the annual list of officers or of managers and members, the initial list and the annual list, it's that $350 minus $200. So it's $150 for that every year plus the state business license fee. Hopefully that's clear. So it's $350 plus the first year you're paying $75. So the total is $425 to form either a corporation or an LLC in the state of Nevada, paid directly to the state. So managing member, you can't change once you put this in. It's locked in. So you put that in and make sure the managing member is there. If you add the officer, if you've already put somebody in as your registered agent, they'll be in your system. So you can add them there, and then you got your managing member in there. Then you have to sign and certify that with the person in the title that this is true. You're not perjuring yourself. You're not lying on a state form. So that's important. You have to certify these things. So don't ever submit false information on any sort of governmental website. That's clearly a crime. So you don't want to do that. So you're going to sign that, and then success. You've got that part of it done. So your articles of organization have been filled out, and that's in your cart now, $75. And now we're going to go on to the next step. So if we look at our shopping cart here, we've got our active member is Mr. Juan Salas. He's our managing member. We've got our address in here. He's accepted that. There we go. The initial list filing is pending until we pay for it. Now we're going to go on to common business registration. And so Silverflume takes you right through this process, and they have another kind of help that they do. So you go on to start for common business registration. So we already know the name of our LLC is going to be Sano Services LLC. And as we come into this, one of the first questions they'll ask you is they'll say, please enter your industry code, your NAICS code, NAICS, okay? It stands for North American Industry Classification System. And what it is it's a system where we classify industries in North America. Okay, so we're classified by certain numbers. So when you do your taxes, if any of you have submitted taxes, you'll see it asks you what type of business do you have, and there's a number that's in there. And this particular thing, Sano Services, we typed in a search and we looked it up, and our NAICS code is 541213, tax preparation services. Okay, so Juan's starting a tax business, so that's a tax preparation services. So here's where you can look up your information on NAICS. You can also look it up, the census site. If you just Google NAICS and census, it'll be the first thing that pops up. You can go there and you can look up your codes for your specific type of business. Why do we want to know about our NAICS code? Okay, one of the things that the IRS uses this, and federal agencies use this, so do state agencies, to track types of businesses for demographic data. Okay, to see what types of businesses are happening, in what areas. Additionally, there is research and information out there based on your NAICS code. For instance, if you're a tax preparation service, I can look up this NAICS code in a variety of different research sites, and we can pull industry data to say, for example, what's the average revenue of a tax preparation service with the NAICS code of 541213? So all those that are in this particular NAICS code, what makes them what do they have in common, right? Do they have how much do they do in sales on average? We can do this if you own a pizza shop. We can do this if you own a massage parlor. We can do this if you own just anything. There's NAICS data for everything. So that's one of the reasons why you're doing it. Plus, as you do business with agencies, government, federal, local, state, as well, usually you're asked for your NAICS code in a variety of places because they want to collect this data as well to see where it's at. So we're going to do tax preparation. They also ask you a few questions about how does your business identify. This is an optional disclosure. Are you a minority-owned business? Are you a woman-owned business, a veteran-owned business? It's self-classification. It's not an official certification, and that's okay. You want to please give this data so the state has it, so we have more accurate data as to who is opening businesses in Nevada. We definitely want this. So after that, it's going to ask you about sales tax. Are you planning on selling a product? And if you do sell a product, we're going to have to get you registered with the tax authorities, right? With the sales tax division. And if you sell anything that's a tangible good in Nevada, you pay sales tax. You'll get a retail sales permit that will enable you to purchase wholesale, which means that you don't pay the sales tax. Only the end user pays the sales tax in Nevada. So if we have something, I gave the example yesterday, if two business owners are in line at Sam's Club, right? And we have the same exact items in our cart, okay? So I'm in line first and then Raina's behind me, right? So she has the same items I have in my cart, and we both have a TV, flat screen TV, and then we have a bunch of drinks and some chips, little bags of chips and some chocolates and some drinks and a TV. Okay, so we walk up in the line. I pull out my retail sales permit and I tell Sam's Club, no taxes on, no sales tax on the chips, the drinks, and the chocolates. Sales tax on the TV. And they go, okay, here's your permit. There you go. So I check through the line. Raina comes through behind me. She got the same stuff in her cart. And she says, charge me sales tax on the chips, the chocolate, and the drinks, but tax exempt on this $800 flat screen TV, right? So we're going to have different bills at the end of the day, right? Our receipts are going to look a little different because mine's going to be about 8 point something percent more, right, than Raina's. But the difference is I own a restaurant and I'm going to be selling the chips and the drinks and the chocolate, okay? Raina owns a TV repair shop and she's actually selling that TV. She goes, hey, I found a TV at a good price. I can resell that for $1,000. There we go, right? So the end user pays the sales tax on that. Services are not taxed in Nevada. Fortunately, we live in a country where we don't have what's called value-added tax. If you travel to Europe, you travel other places, services are taxed. Every step along the way of, for example, if you sell wooden furniture, the logging company that cuts the logs down and sells the logs wholesale has to charge this value-added tax on the logs. And then the mill has to charge a value-added tax when they saw them into pieces. And then the wholesaler of the wood has to pay value-added tax when they sell it to you as the actual craftsman. And then you charge sales tax at the end on top of the value-added tax to the end user. So prices for goods are much higher in other countries because of this. Mexico, it's the case too.
Yes, but in Mexico, it works a little different in finance. Like we're able to put it as an expense. The tax that we paid on everything, we're able to put it as an expense.
Yeah. So your accounting's done a little bit differently as far
as right. So it gets compensated somehow, you know.
It comes out in the wash, but in the end, it ends up being higher cost of goods, right? And so it's typically you're required, once you register with the sales tax authorities, you're required to fill out it's a joint sales tax use tax return every month. So here it is, the end of July, I do my books and I figure out how much I sold, how much that I sell was taxable, because we have services and products. So we figure out what amount was taxable. We've collected that tax money from our customers and our clients. We have 1 month to remit that money to the state of Nevada. Now, if you don't remit the money or you don't file your tax form, you're going to get sideways with the taxation authorities very quickly. Everybody always talks about how horrible an IRS audit is. I can guarantee you, you do not want the state of Nevada's sales tax authority coming in and auditing your business. They'll come and sit in your office and they'll audit everything you've done for the last however long you can, because they say, hey, if you've got an infraction, you're not keeping up with stuff, you know, we'll find some other stuff you're not keeping up with, and we'll make sure that you behave yourself now. So there's penalties that apply to this type of stuff. Another thing is use tax, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but use tax is when you buy something that you're going to use in your business. Sales tax applies to things that you're buying wholesale and you're going to retail them to somebody else. It's only staying in your business for a little bit of time. If I'm a carpenter, I buy wood wholesale. I buy screws, I buy glue, I buy all this stuff. I don't pay sales tax when I buy that stuff, because when I turn it into a piece of furniture, when I sell that, I charge sales tax to the end user.
And the same applies to food. Remember, we were talking about that yesterday, because we had like a hot dog.
We had a hot dog cart vendor.
Yeah, we had a hot dog cart. So she was asking that, you know, if she can, right, the ingredients.
Yep.
So yes, the answer was yes. The ingredients has to be no tax.
Yeah, no tax, because in the end, you're providing the hot dog, the bun,
right?
Any ingredients you put on the top of that hot dog, the onions, the chili, the whatever, the ketchup, the mustard, all that you buy wholesale, because when you sell retail, you're charging sales tax for that final product. And the theory is the final product's a more finished good. Finished goods demand a higher price in the marketplace, right? For anything.
Exactly. And then they're going to collect a highest tax because
Yes.
the price is higher than the original goods.
Than the original, yeah. The
ingredients or goods or something like that.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. So as we said, use tax is on stuff that you buy that you use in your business. Your desk, your computers, it can be a lamp, it can be furniture, chairs, whatever, office type stuff. If you ever do get audited by sales tax authorities, they will come in your office and they can very well say, show me receipts for everything that you own here in the office. Because you're using it in your business. Now, hopefully, if you've gone to Office Max or Staples or Target or IKEA or whatever, you've paid sales tax for these items. That's why it's necessary. You got to keep receipts. So if you keep these receipts for this stuff, you can show that you paid sales tax on it. If you bought a computer, if I bought a computer from Raina, me and Raina just go, hey, Raina's like, I got a computer. I said, I need one here. I'll pay you $400 for it. Okay, great. She's not going to charge me sales tax, right? So if I go to a garage sale and I buy a desk I'm going to use in my business, they're not charging me sales tax. If I buy something out of state on eBay, on whatever, they're not going to charge sales tax necessarily. Okay. So what happens is if you're using this in your business, you need to pay sales tax on it. It's called use tax. And it's the same amount of sales tax. You just need to declare it on your form. Okay. So every month you have to tell the sales tax authorities, I sold X amount of total sales. This portion was exempt, meaning they were services usually, right? So that part of my sales was services. So if I sold $20,000 total in sales for the month, 15,000 of that 20,000 was service based, no tax, that's tax exempt. 5,000 is subject to sales tax. Depends what county in Nevada I sold them in. We'll probably do a class soon on filling out this form. And you do it online now. It's pretty simple. As long as you file appropriately, you're doing fine with the sales tax authorities. Okay, but you must file every month. They'll tell you if you have a certain type of business where your volume is low, you can they'll tell you how often you file. You may file every 3 months or every 6 months, but for the most part, most businesses file monthly. You have 1 month to gather your books and get that filed in. If you don't, you'll start getting emails and letters, and they'll be your best friend, kind of like, and you don't want that to happen, really. They're good friends, but we'll just keep them right there, right? So at the very bottom here, we have our federal employer identification number, our EIN number. If you know it at this point, you can put it in. Chances are we don't have an EIN yet because we just are barely forming the entity, right? You don't want to get your EIN before your entity, because what if the entity name is taken already? I had a client before that had they registered an EIN and then they couldn't get the actual name for their entity. And so now you got to go to IRS and tell them, oh, I messed up and I take this off. It's just sloppy. So you don't want to do that. So we'll talk about getting your EIN in just a minute. So that's sales tax. So locations, you can add all of your business locations into the system here. And so you hit add new location, it'll ask for your address. And so you go ahead and you put your address in. It'll ask you if you're going to have employees at this location, which is important because you need to get set up with the labor board, labor commissioner for that. So you're entering your locations. Our primary location's here on Cheyenne Avenue. So we put that in, we hit next. That's our jurisdiction. Employees, we have to certify, if we said we're going to have employees, which we did, we have to declare that we've read and we will comply with all Nevada labor laws. Okay, it's up to you to get everything set up appropriately, get those all the workforce compliance issues that you have. You have to go to the office of the labor commissioner, has everything regarding like it says here, each employer shall establish and maintain regular pay days, shall post a notice for those pay days. Anybody who's worked a job, there's a posting place where it tells you how often you get paid. It talks about workers' compensation if you're injured on the job. there's these posters and flyers and things that need to be posted in a public place for your employees to see and to read. All that can be found on the Nevada Labor Commissioner website.
Mike, I have a question. Sorry to interrupt. It says, I'm moving to Nevada in November from Australia. Nice, welcome. And setting up a film production business. Am I able to register, or should I wait till I get to Nevada and get my green card then register? Yeah.
You know, the great thing about Nevada is you do not have to have residency in the state to form a business. You do not have to be a citizen of the United States.
Well, resident, yeah, but not like a green card, right? Am I right?
Yeah, you don't have to have, well, I mean, you can be a foreign national and set up a company in
Nevada.
In Nevada, no one cares.
You just need like a registered agent.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you need. If you're not here personally, if you have somebody, a friend or someone that wants to be your registered agent, you could set that up ahead of time to do that. What's interesting is I think a film company might be exempt from the state business license. That's one of the odd exemptions that's there that I would have them check into with the Secretary of State. But yeah, certain types of things, you definitely want to get set up with the Nevada Film Commission, because they track all production companies that are doing films here to make sure that they help you in order to get venues for shooting and things like that. Because we know when there's films in Nevada, especially Las Vegas, we have a ton of movies that are shot in Las Vegas. And when a production company comes in to shoot a movie, a film company, they bring a lot of revenue into our state, right? So they show up and they're going to hire local labor to do all the, the people that work with the production, the grips and the lighting and the gaffers and all that stuff is going to be handled. The catering's done locally. The rental trucks are done. They employ a lot of people for a short amount of time, but it is a really good economic impact to our economy. So we definitely love having film companies come to Nevada and set stuff up. But if you're coming here, you could set it up ahead of time if you'd like to. Like I said, you're not required to actually be here physically to do this, and you're not required to be a citizen. No one cares. Yeah, if anyone asks you for your citizenship or says, "Oh, you have to be an American citizen to do," no, you don't. Not at all. You can be a foreign national. You don't have to have any sort of status in the United States, and you can still own a business here. God bless America. Just gonna say.
bless Nevada too.
And God bless Nevada. Exactly. Thank you, Raymond. Yeah.
And there's a comment about, as I understand it, LLCs can still be sued unless it's a serious LLC only available in Texas. Is correct, right?
LLCs can always be sued. Like I said, I got sued 8 times in 8 years. 4 were completely frivolous lawsuits. 1 lawsuit alleged I couldn't sell wholesale. I couldn't buy wholesale to sell retail. I was like, that is the stupidest lawsuit in the world, but we got sued, right? So yeah, it's going to get thrown out of court, but anybody can sue you for any reason. This is America. God bless America, right? We have a lot of freedoms here. One of the freedoms is you can sue anybody for anything you want to, right? Now the judge may throw it out of court and may go, hey, why are you bringing this frivolous lawsuit into my courtroom? I'm going to make you pay all the legal fees of your opposition you're trying to sue here. So anybody can be sued for any reason. A series LLC can also be sued, right? You can be sued for a variety of different things. And if you're a property manager and you own a rental property and you have renters, chances are you're going to get sued eventually. Something's going to happen in that property, and there you go. I had a friend of mine. This is a good story, Raina. This is a good story. I'm going to share this one.
Okay.
I had a friend of mine. He owns apartment complexes, right? He had one of his apartment complexes, and they were all owned in separate LLCs. He had about a dozen of them he owned here in town. And one of the apartment complexes, there were 2 guys that were engaged in an illegal drug deal. They were buying, selling drugs outside the fence of his apartment complex. These 2 men got into a fight, and there were knives. They were fighting with knives outside the apartment complex. One of the men got stabbed and ended up jumping over the wall of the apartment complex, and the other guy pursued him over the wall. So here they are, illegal activity, they're trespassing, trying to kill each other, and they jumped over the wall. The guy that got stabbed survived, but he was cut up pretty bad. He sued my friend's company because he said, you didn't have proper security. There wasn't a night watchman guard there, and there wasn't adequate lighting. Now, neither of these men lived there. They were engaged in illegal activity, but they brought that lawsuit, and guess what? The jury found for this guy and awarded him, it was in the millions for damages. And my friend ended up selling the place to pay for that lawsuit. But because it was in a separate LLC, the liability with that LLC stays there. So he kept his other properties fine, but he had to sell the one to kind of pay for the damages that were incurred on this. So completely frivolous lawsuit, completely unfair. If you think about it, it's like, geez,
Yes.
anything could happen to anybody, right? Think about if you have a renter in a rental property and they're in there, you know, how often do you visit your rental property? Maybe once a year, maybe, as long as they're paying the rent and there's not a problem. What if they're in your rental property cooking meth, right? And they start a fire. There's a meth lab in your rental property. They start a fire and they burn your house down, right? But what if it's a big fire and it burns down 8 houses on the block? You're going to get sued. And you know what they're going to say in court? You're one of these slumlord landlords. That's what you did. You weren't checking. You let these criminals into here, and chances are you might lose that lawsuit, right? So stuff like this happens every single day. So we get sued for all sorts of varieties of reasons. That's why we have entities. We want to stay one step away from the possibility of our personal assets getting touched, right? So that's a smart thing to do.
Thank you, Mike.
God bless America. Yeah. Okay. So here we've set up our articles of organization. That's our initial list of managers. That's done. We did our common business registration now. We did our labor law certification. We can go through and do our sales and use tax receipt, and we can do workers' comp too with SCATs. It even does like DMV permit for non-resident business vehicles. It covers a variety of issues. You can go through these. They're optional, but we're going to go ahead and check out now. You have to sign and declare that you're saying truthful things in here. So I have read and understand my legal obligation relating to unclaimed property holders, workers' comp, and all these things above. So we all sign this. So Juan signed his life away right here. Good job, Juan. Boom. And then we pay, right? So total charge to file an LLC in Nevada, $425. $75 for the articles of organization, $350 for the initial list of members and managers, which includes the state business license of $200 in there. So $425, as soon as you pay it, you are live. Congratulations. You now own an LLC. Now what? Okay, next step, we need to apply for our DBA. What's DBA mean? It means doing business as. If you use a name, any other name other than your actual physical name, you must have a DBA, and it's also called a fictitious firm name. So Mike is doing business as Mike's Car Wash. Okay. Whatever name you're presenting to the public, that's your trade name. That's your DBA and how it's filed. Okay. We file our DBAs with one source, and it's Clark County. Now, if you go onto Clark County's website, you can either go on their website or just Google search Clark County, Nevada, DBA, and you'll pull this up and it'll say FFN name search, which means fictitious firm name. Your name cannot be taken in Clark County. So if somebody else has Mike's Car Wash, I can't use it. Chances are somebody's got Mike's Car Wash, right? So maybe I'll call it Mike's Best Car Wash, the Best Car Wash by Mike. Whatever we want to try it, we can try in here till we find it. Once we find something that works, we've got the name in there. This is all we fill out for a DBA. It's very simple, okay? The undersigned does hereby certify you're conducting business in Clark County, Nevada under this fictitious firm name. Mike's Car Wash. Here's my mailing address. here's my owner, it's owned by Mike. Mike signs it, and then you have to have this form notarized, okay? So you can mail this form in. You cannot file it online yet. Clark County hasn't got that set up yet, but you can print this out, fill it in, take it to a notary public, sign it in front of the notary, and then mail all that in with a check for $25 payable to Clark County. And you send it to the Clark County clerk, and then they'll mail you one back. Or you can go into the Clark County government office or the Clark County clerk's office. It's the same place where you get your marriage licenses. So if you go in there, there's always a big sign for marriage licenses. You go in there, and their clerks there will sign, will notarize this for you, okay, for free, which is kind of nice. So you go on, you pay $25, they stamp it, boom, you've got your fictitious firm name form. Now, if you're a sole proprietor, this is all you need. You don't register on the state level. You get that exemption from the state business license, but all you need is this DBA, and then you can go get your local license, open your bank account. That's as simple as it gets. If I'm an LLC, I can form several DBAs, or I'm a corporation, I can do business as several different trade names if I'd like, right? So we gave the example before, if I'm married and or there's a couple, right? And it's we can form his and hers LLC. Okay, so his and hers LLC is doing business as Mike's Car Wash and her flower shop. Okay, totally different types of businesses, two different local licenses, but as far as taxation goes, it all rolls up into one LLC, which gets reported on your 1040. Okay, because you're a married couple. So in the state of Nevada, if you're a sole member LLC, sole person LLC, you report your profits or losses goes to your Schedule C of your 1040, your individual tax return. If you're married in the state of Nevada, okay, you still file a joint 1040 and it goes on your Schedule C. It's considered what they call a disregarded entity, which means that it doesn't pay its own taxes. It's taxed as a sole proprietorship. Now, you can opt with the IRS to have your LLC taxed as a partnership, in which case you would file, if you have two people that are partners in this LLC, two of the members are not husband and wife, they're not married legally, they would be filing a partnership return, and you'd file Form 1065 with the IRS, okay? And then that 1065 would issue to you Schedule K1s that now you put into your personal tax return, right? Now, if you're being taxed as a corporation, corporations pay their own taxes. You have your own tax form. It's Form 1120. Is that correct, Juan? Chime in if I get anything wrong, Juan, on the taxation. But Form 1120 is usually what you file as a corporation for your taxes. At what point you'll also get a Schedule K1 for a distribution there. So corporations pay their own taxes, and then you get distributions from that corporation. You pay your own taxes on that. So there's double taxation with a corporation. S corporations are a little different. It's just a subchapter S of the tax code. There's a little different designation. That's more of a pass-through entity, and that goes on the owner's Schedule C as well. So there's a few different things. That's why you do need to talk to your financial person or tax advisor before you set this up.
Yes, I'll try to, when I send the slides later in the day, I'll try to give you the links to many videos that we have. They are kind of applied to what we're talking today. So that way you have a better idea of how the whole thing of entities work.
Yeah, we have lots and lots of videos. We've been very busy creating videos. We're creating an online virtual classroom of videos that answer a variety of different topics related to the classes that we teach, so that we can help you learn very quickly for your business. Some of the videos are very short, 3 to 4 minutes. Other ones are a little longer. So if you want to do a quick dive, you can do it, or you want to do a deep dive, you can do that as well.
Yes. Mike, I have a question. She says, saying, I intend to use releases with clients, much like photographic releases. Does that offer me protection of any kind in Nevada?
Yes, if you're hiring models and you have to get their permission to use their images and things, or else the model can sue you for infringement, essentially copyright infringement, if you will, right? But yeah, typically I used to be in the advertising business. This was a very common practice. We'd have a model release form that would say to what extent we can use the pictures that we take of them in certain applications. And some of these model release forms get kind of complicated, but you can find a very simple one online, or if you go to LegalZoom or just talk to an attorney, they probably have a kind of some boilerplate language that you can put in there. That can keep you from stuff, but you know what? If you use images in an ad the model doesn't like, she can still sue you, or he can still sue you, right? Now, whether it's proper or not, like I said, anybody can be sued for any reason. So if somebody wants to sue you, they'll file a lawsuit and you go to court, and the judge has to either make a ruling. That's why we have judges. They have to make rulings on this stuff. But people love to sue in the United States. We just love to sue each other. Nobody wants to pick up the phone and talk anymore. Everyone wants to file a lawsuit. So just prepare to be sued. So, but the more you do, if you go into court, a model's suing you because I don't like where you put the ad. Well, it says in my release that I can put it anywhere I want. There you
Right.
go. Okay,
And
case dismissed.
that's why it's very important for you to get advice, like Mike said, a CPA, a lawyer. There's always a good idea to do research about
Absolutely.
about the kind of business that you want to open, like what kind of liabilities and all that kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very important. Thank you,
Yep.
Mike.
Okay, our next step is to obtain an EIN. EIN stands for Employer Identification Number. And all businesses are required to have an EIN unless you are exempt. And there's one case that you're exempt from having an EIN. If you are a sole proprietor and you do not have employees, you are not required to have an EIN number with the IRS. Okay, now this is your federal tax identification number, your federal employer identification number. If you have a business entity, it's an LLC, a corporation, a partnership, a trust, all these have to have their own EIN. It keeps your taxes separate from your personal taxes. Okay, if you're a sole proprietor, when you file your tax return, your Schedule C will say that, are you using an EIN or are you using your social security number? Now, if you're a sole proprietor and you don't have employees, you can use your social security number. But I would still recommend that even if you are there, because you might decide to get an employee. And if you get an employee, now you have to file for an EIN number. Just file for the EIN number. It's fine. Okay, get that done and put that out there. It's simple, it's easy, it's free. It's the only thing you'll ever get for free from IRS is your EIN number. Okay, so when you go to IRS's website, this is what it looks like. You go to the search bar, type in EIN, and it'll take you into a little EIN wizard that they have, a little assistant. It asks you what type of legal structure are you applying for. So right here, if you're a sole proprietor, if you're a partnership, if you're a corporation or an LLC, you click on that. Within 5 minutes, you get emailed your EIN, or you can download the EIN from IRS. It's that simple. Do not pay anyone to do this for you. It's a common mistake business owners make. They go, oh, this is complex. I don't want to do this. No, you need to do this, and you need to do this right. Don't go to a company to do this for you. It's a piece of cake. It's 5 minutes. It costs nothing. It's free, and you stay in control of everything. Okay. As a business owner, it's important that you know the steps to this process. It's simple to do. Once you have that number, you'll put that on all your correspondence with the IRS. If you remit payments, they'll ask for your EIN number. It's very common. When you do your banking, your bank will ask for your EIN number. You'll have to take this form with you. So print all this stuff out. When you go into your bank, they'll want to see those articles of organization for the LLC. They'll want to see what's called an operating agreement. The operating agreement is what's our deal with all the partners of this LLC. Very important. If you are not in business with your spouse, okay, if you have partners in an LLC or a corporation, there's this operating agreement that, dictates what happens in that partnership. It dictates stuff like who can open a bank account, who can close a bank account. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients of mine that come in to see me and they're like, Mike, I got in a fight with my partner and he went and emptied all the bank accounts and closed them, or he went and incurred debt, or he took out 14 credit cards, or he got a business loan I didn't even know about, and he bought a personal truck with it. Okay, so is there anything that prohibited him from doing that, right? Let's look at your operating agreement. Well, I didn't say anything in there that you couldn't do it. Okay, some wise stuff for an operating agreement might be, hey, 2 signatures on every check. And so your bank has that. So if all of a sudden your bank's cashing checks for this person or opening new accounts, if your operating agreement says cannot open new accounts without all people present and signing, that's a good protection for you as an individual. You have to really make sure that your interests are protected. You're in business to make money, yeah, and you're in business to do what you're doing in business, but you're also in business for your family, for your future. And if you want to protect that, you need to do it properly. Okay. So do this yourself. Get your EIN number yourself. It's simple. You'll have it done. I swear it takes less than 10 minutes to get. It's probably the easiest thing you're going to do when you form a business. Okay. Next step is a DUNS number. DUNS is a DUNS number is provided by the company Dun & Bradstreet. Okay, so they're at dnb.com. And when you go to get a DUNS number is kind of like a number that starts building your corporate credit. Okay, if you do any sort of financing, you want to set up terms with vendors or anything like that, you'll be asked not only what's your EIN number, they want to know what's your DUNS number. And Dun & Bradstreet tracks data. Okay, they track what small businesses do, lines of credit, that type of thing. If you want to start building your corporate credit, you need to get a DUNS number. So I'd suggest getting this right from the get-go. Also, if you're applying for any sort of federal contract, okay, any sort of governmental contract, they will want to see your DUNS number, okay? So automatically just go ahead and get in there, apply for it. DNB charges to package information, okay? And they have all sorts of stuff that they do as a company. You can look them up on their website. They are not a government agency. They are a private company, okay? To get a DUNS number, though, you do not have to pay for it. So they'll try to upsell you several things. They will call you on the phone when you register to get one to verify you're an actual person, because they'll want to report this data in their database to make sure that you're an actual company and you're formed. They want to verify your address and a couple of things. So they'll call you and then they'll ask, hey, we've got these other services. No, thank you, I'm not interested. You can always buy those down the road if you're in need of them. But for most small business owners starting out, just get the DUNS number so you have it. If you're applying for credit someplace, like I said, they'll want to know your DUNS number. If you get an account with like a corporate account with one of the office stores, or with Granger, or with I can't think of the other one. Corporate Express is another one. They'll ask for your DUNS number. So the DUNS tracks credit on a business basis, and it helps you start to build it. So go ahead and get that set up right now. Chances are you won't use it much, but it's there in the beginning so that you have it. All right. Then the last step. I know that LLC felt a little painful at $425, but you still have to pay more because you now need a local license too. Okay. So what license do I get? There are 5 licensing jurisdictions in the Las Vegas Valley. Okay. We have the city of Las Vegas, the city of North Las Vegas, Clark County, Henderson, and Boulder City. But wait, Mike, Clark County is the county, isn't that? Doesn't it go state, county, city? Yes, except with business licensing, Clark County functions like a city. Okay. So in our city, the city of Las Vegas is its own proper city. It has its own fire department. It has its own business licensing department. It has its own building department, right? North Las Vegas, same thing, has its own business licensing, has its own fire department. It also has its own police force. Where it gets a little complicated is Clark County and Las Vegas share the Metropolitan Police Department, okay? So that's where it gets a little bit convoluted. Henderson is a proper city too. Henderson has its own police department, has its own fire department, has its own building department, and it has its own business licensing. So does Boulder City. It's a proper city, has its own fire department, has its own police department, business licensing, and building departments, right? Where it gets very convoluted is now Clark County runs the school district for all 5 of these jurisdictions, well, including, we pick up all of Clark County, so it includes Mesquite and Laughlin too, okay? So that's a little bit weird as it goes. Now, most of the cities have city councils that have 5 council members and a mayor. Clark County structured with 7 commissioners that run that. Everything that's south of Sahara Avenue traditionally is in Clark County until you hit Henderson, until your address says Henderson. So where it gets complex is you may have a Las Vegas address, like our address here, 5715 South Pecos Road, Las Vegas, Nevada. It says Las Vegas, right? I'm in the city of Las Vegas. Not necessarily. There's a jurisdiction locator, and it's on the county website, and it's this enormous long URL that's up here, right? So you can copy this, or maybe we can put this in the chat too, right? It's super long, but
I'll provide a slide.
Yeah. We'll provide the slides, you guys. Yeah. So,
it's too long.
so you have to check, are you actually located in Clark County or are you in Las Vegas? Because Clark County, like I said, Sahara kind of divides the city. Sahara goes the length of the town, right? So half of Summerlin is in the city of Las Vegas. Half of it's in Clark County. East Las Vegas is the same thing. Half of it's in Las Vegas and half of it is in Clark County. It's Las Vegas until you hit North Las Vegas city limits, right? So you're like, Mike, I don't know. I mean, if you think about it, the airport is actually owned by Clark County. Clark County owns and manages the airport. UNLV sits on Clark County land. Okay, so everything, Southern Highlands, Clark County. Rhodes Ranch, Clark County. I mean, it's a big, huge chunk of land. So if we type our address in here, we type 5715 Pecos Road, it pops up and it says, hey, wait, look at this, 5715 South Pecos, that's where we're at. Clark County, even though we say Las Vegas, our address says Las Vegas, but as far as jurisdiction-wise, we go to Clark County. Now, if we were on North Pecos Road, we'd be in North Las Vegas. Right?
Exactly.
Same streets, same address. One's north, one's south. 2 different licenses, 2 different locations, right?
Yes. Now, yesterday we had a bunch of questions regarding this. For example, Mike was giving an example about a plumber, right? And he was saying, okay, this person is going to do repairs in North Las Vegas. And then he also is going to make repairs in Henderson. So he needs the license for each city to be able to perform services there. But we also have an example of a person who does taxes, okay? Yes, she visits a lot of clients around the different cities. Like she has clients in Henderson, she has clients in Las Vegas, but her office is located in Las Vegas, and that's where she does the work for them, for her clients. So because she is based on a location that is in Las Vegas and she doesn't need the other license because she's providing the service right there.
Exactly. There's something called nexus of your business. Where's the nexus of your business? Where does your business take place? If you're a tax preparer, it takes place wherever your address is, okay? Now you can have clients in every jurisdiction and out of state too. You don't need licenses in all these different jurisdictions as long as the nexus of your business. Where's your bookkeeping happen? Where are your records of your business at?
Exactly.
Right? Now, if you're a plumber, you have a truck and it says Mike's Plumbing, here's my contractor's license, and I'm based in Henderson. If I'm rolling in North Las Vegas, somebody will turn me in I guarantee you, another plumber will see me and go, that guy is not licensed here. You'll get turned in. Okay. So if you have a vehicle and you're performing, because a plumber is different, you're performing your service in your business on a property that's located in that jurisdiction. If I'm an electrician, the same thing. If I'm a handyman, it's the same thing. I don't do my handyman stuff at home. Oh, well, I live in Boulder City, but I was out in North Las Vegas doing my handyman stuff. And you will frequently get the call from people and they'll say, hey, somebody turned me into the licensing bureau in North Las Vegas. I was out there with my van that said, you know, Billy's handyman service, and they turned me in, and I don't know what to do. And I said, he says, I thought I had a license in Boulder City. I said, well, you do, but you need one in North Las Vegas if you're going to actually be doing the work in North Las Vegas. Okay.
Exactly. So for example, Mike, if the person was going to do the energy healing, yes. She has her own location, like I said, in North Las Vegas. So obviously she's not going to need all those licenses. But if she does this service in-house, like if she goes to their homes to do the service, then she does gonna need those licenses, right?
Yes.
Just you know, just
technically, yes. If you're a massage therapist and you go and you do massages at people's homes, if you're a landscaper and you go into somebody's home to do that, technically you have to have a license. Now,
so it all depends on the kind of industry you're in.
Okay, so I'll get this question too, Raina. Well, I'm a massage therapist, Mike, and I have clients all over the city. I really don't want to get a bunch of licenses. I don't have my information on my car. Am I really at risk? You're not compliant, for sure. You're running the risk of someone turning you in, and then you're getting fined, and you'll have to get the license anyway. So just get licensed and don't worry about it, right? Then put your sticker, you know, put your thing on your car happily, right? Be compliant. We try to teach compliance, right? We try to be good corporate citizens. We're all in this together, but don't be looking over your shoulder all the time, right? That sucks. It sucks to live like that. You don't want to live like that. So no, I mean, realistically, are you going to get turned in? Well, I don't know. If your neighbor's like, hey, we're so-and-so, and they look you up and you're only licensed in Henderson, and now you're doing this work in Mesquite, yeah, you might get turned in. And yeah, for good reason, because you're operating outside of the bounds where you should. So if you deliver your service like that, you have to have a license for every jurisdiction. And so a lot of people are like, well, I can only afford one license, Mike. And I'm like, well, get one in Clark County then, because it's a giant jurisdiction, right? And just put your efforts into the Clark County jurisdictional area, or wherever your business is licensed at. Great, you get a home-based license. Focus in that area. Why do you want to be traveling all over if you don't have to, right? If I live in Boulder City, do I really want to be doing a lot of work in North Las Vegas or Mesquite? No, but I might want to do some work in Laughlin, right? It's a little closer. A little. Anyway, okay. Yeah. So that's the business. That's the license you get. So special permits and zoning. There are special licenses if you sell certain types of products or deliver certain types of services. Okay. Some of these are liquor licenses. You cannot sell alcohol just because you decide to one day, right? You have to have a special permit in order to do this. If you want to transport people, you want to transport goods, there are special state licenses for this. Cosmetology, you can't just set up a barber shop in your house, okay? You have to be licensed by the cosmetology board. Your locations have to be approved. Food and beverage, you can't sell snow cones in your front yard. Really, you can't. I know there's news articles that pop up about kids selling lemonade sometimes in little towns, and then they get busted for selling lemonade. It's true. That lemonade could have salmonella in it, right? You could get people sick. These laws exist because something happened, right? And there's a reason these laws exist, is because the state needs to maintain control to ensure that people are protected. That's the reason we have licenses, is to protect people. So the reason we have food and beverage licenses is like, hey, we're trying to keep people from getting sick and dying of some foodborne illness, right? Contractors, if you're a general contractor or you're any of the trades, You have to be a licensed contractor. There's tests and things that you have to take. Why? Because if I hire an electrician, I expect that my house won't burn down when I turn the lights on. Okay. The state ensures that. Anything dealing with children or elderly people, those are controlled through the state as well. Medical. Do you really want to go to a doctor that just hangs up a sign and says, "Hey, I'm a medical doctor"? We've had cases like that in town where doctors have killed people, or people claiming to be doctors. They're not even doctors. They're not licensed, and we can have all sorts of problems. Or they're not cleaning things properly or whatever. Like I said, these permits exist because the state's obligation is to keep its citizens alive and well. Okay. So medical, anything with insurance, anything with gaming, if you're a private investigator, if you're a locksmith, okay, you can't just say, "Hey, I'm a locksmith," and be in business. There's a special license from the state that you have to go through. And so those are the special licenses. So in your type of business, if you have a special type of license, you need to get that in addition to your local license. Even before you open your doors, you need to be licensed from the state. So if you are part of that, you typically know what type of businesses and things that you have. It's like I've had people that come to me and are like, "Hey, Mike, I want to open a taxi cab company." I'm like, "Yeah, you have to go through the taxi cab commission." I mean, that's just how it works. Okay. So those are the special licenses. Zoning, the couple of issues with zoning. The first one is a lot of people want a home-based business. You have to have a home occupation permit from the local licensing bureau of the city that you're in. Either one of the cities or Clark County has to issue a home occupation permit. Okay. So even if you can be granted a home occupation permit, there may be zoning issues, especially with HOAs. We have a lot of issues with HOAs. I had a house in an area, and the HOA did not permit businesses of any kind to be licensed in the homes. I was okay to have a home occupation permit, but I was renting this house. The landlord said I was okay to have a home occupation permit. However, on file at the county, the HOA had listed no licenses at these homes. There were clearly people that did work at their homes. You just couldn't license your work at your house. You know what I mean? So in that case, I had to go rent a space and put my business license there. So sometimes there's HOA rules that are there for zoning. There's also prohibited areas, right? If you're trying to open an adult type of business, like a strip club or some business like that, there are certain areas of town where those are not prohibited. Dispensaries are only permitted in certain areas. You cannot have a bar or a place that sells liquor or an adult themed business within a certain amount of feet of a school, right? There are rules to all this stuff. Sometimes zoning stuff needs to be amended. Okay. I had a client that was in a commercial plaza on Flamingo and Decatur, giant commercial plaza, very clearly a commercial plaza. However, they were opening a store in there, a convenience store, and the back wall of this commercial plaza backed up to a residence. Okay, it was the corner. It had a 12-foot wall. There was no entrance. It wasn't like anybody was going to jump the wall over or anything like that. But because they were within like 250 feet of this wall, they were not able to get their local license until the zoning issue was remedied. Okay. Now, so what we did is we went on to Google Maps and we took pictures of the closest egress or the entrance to this community was about a quarter of a mile up the street. There was it was just like a block wall, a giant block wall. And then there was one entrance. And so we showed to even get in the community, it was that far. And even though the business was that under 250 feet away from the wall of a residence, there was no way that residents were over and back from the wall. So we had to take pictures. The client had to go before the county commission, to the zoning meeting, and request for a zone variance, right? Very common thing to do to get something rezoned. And if you make a compelling case, in this case, they issued it. They said, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, this is an old law. Of course, we don't want to have a convenience store next to a residence.
that was on file. It was a law that was there, but in this case, it made sense to grant the variance, and they did. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So before you sign any sort of lease agreement for your business, make sure that the zoning works for your type of business. Okay, if you cannot get that, if you're opening a convenience store, for example, and there's an ordinance that says you can't have it in that spot, I don't care how great you make that store look, you will not be opening that business, or you'll open and get shut down almost immediately. Okay, and the same thing with these special permits. I mean, I've had numerous former clients that, you know, I get a call and somebody says, "Hey, I had somebody that purchased a locksmithing company, and they did not get licensed with the state as a locksmith. So they were like, well, I'm just the owner. I'm not delivering the service." Well, they got shut down, and fined, and that can destroy your business, right? I've had other people that have started a bit. I had a person that was selling, they had a commercial kitchen, and they rented this facility, opened it up, and they were making baby food. And the county, the health district for Southern Nevada Health District would not license them for food service because it was dealing with infants, and they wanted them to have a federal license for that. And they eventually went out of business because they couldn't open their doors, right? So you don't want to have those cases happen. So know what you need before you go into it, whether it's a zoning variance or whether it's something else. This is very important, because if you lease a space, you have a contract with that property management company, and you've got to pay this every month. You have a 3-year lease now. Hey, guess what? You can't open your business in there. That's a problem. That's a real problem. And if you can't get these things, you know, NV Energy will not turn on the lights to your building if you can't get the zoning worked out. I mean, shocking, right? But you have to abide by the rules that are there. Bank loans. Let's talk about what it takes to get a bank loan, commercial bank loan. The 3 C's: credit, collateral, and cash flow. Credit. Your FICO score, Fair Isaac Company FICO score, that's the combination of the 3 scores. That's what most banks use. You must be at least 650. That is the bare bones bottom that you need to even be able to apply for a commercial loan. If your credit is not 650, it means you can't just walk into a car dealership and buy a car. If you can walk into a dealership and get financed, you might be able to get a commercial loan. Okay, you might be able to get a loan for your business. But if you're not good enough, your credit is not good enough to walk in and buy a car, just forget about it. If your credit's subpar, and 650, like I said, is the floor, you may still even get denied at around 650. We want to see you right around 700 to really get a business loan. And why is this? It's because, and they're like, well, Mike, isn't this based on my business? Yeah, your business isn't open, right? Your startup company. They're going to base this on your personal credit. So go through your credit ahead of time, 6 to 8 months before you open the business. If there's any errors on there, get those fixed. We have a class on credit repair that we brought somebody in that we have a video on that as well that can kind of assist you with that, and some ways that you can start to improve your credit. If it's smashed, if you know your credit's smashed, forget about a bank loan. Okay. So that's the first step, is credit. Second one is collateral. Banks require that the loan is secured with hard assets. Okay. We're talking your house, your car, boats, planes, trains, automobiles. I mean, this is what they want. So if I'm going to borrow $100,000 from the bank to start a business, they're going to want $100,000 in equity in something. And that's usually a second on your home. They'll want to take out a guarantee on your home, or it could be a vehicle. It could be property someplace. Banks want, they only want to loan you money if you're a good credit risk, right? In addition, cash flow. If you're trying to get a business loan, if you're a startup company, you've got no cash flow. Okay. So it's only based on credit and collateral. which can still happen. So if you have great credit, if you have 800 credit, you probably can get a business loan. They'll probably just give you a loan, although they may give you a credit card for 10,000 or 20,000. Okay, if you've got good credit. However, cash flow, businesses, if you want a business loan, you have to document that you have cash flow. Your business is throwing off cash. Okay. Are you a good credit risk, right? Do you want to loan, think about it yourself personally. Do you want to loan a business money that is not throwing off cash? Do you want to loan a business money that is not profitable? The answer is probably no. No. Do you want to loan your buddy 20 bucks if you loaned him 40 before and he never paid you back? No, you don't want to do that. So credit worthiness, okay, collateral, and cash flow. If you have a job and you can prove that I have, besides this business, I also have income from this job, my credit is 740, you're probably a good candidate for a loan, even if you don't have that business opening and cash flowing. Once the business is open, they want to see profitability and cash flowing in the business to make sure that you get that loan. All right, alternative funding. If you don't qualify for this stuff, if your credit's subpar, if you have no cash flow in your business, you might be able to get alternative funding. This can be from 3 sources: friends, family, and fools. Okay, fools are anybody dumb enough to loan you money because you're really not a good credit risk, right? Your friends are your friends. They'll take a chance on you. Your family will do that too. Where this gets interesting is sometimes, entrepreneurs, it's usually not your first rodeo. You've probably failed 4 or 5 times before you're in the current business that you're at, right? So your family has watched you, and sometimes your friends have watched you go through business success and or failures, right? And if you've borrowed money from mom and dad or your uncle or whoever else, and you haven't paid that money back and you failed several times over, they may not want to loan you money. Plus, it could make Thanksgiving dinner a little interesting. The holidays get a little different if you owe, your uncle some money. So there are sometimes some emotional costs that come with that if you're going to borrow money from family or friends, right? It's not impossible. A lot of people do finance companies like this. A sister of mine and she's an interior designer. She started her interior design business. My father loaned her $3,000, and he said, "You're either going to fall on your face, or you're going to get this out of your system, or you're going to succeed." And she ended up leasing a little hole in the wall space. Within 3 months, she knocked the wall through and took over the second space. Year later, she was in a unit 5 times that size, kept growing and growing and growing. So it can be a great thing to do this. And families, if they have the funding or they want to loan money, that's a great thing to do to help get people started in a business like this. It's great to be able to advise and help. And so people want to see you successful. And if you're successful and you're doing it, that's great. It can be tricky if you've burned bridges in the past from this. So just FYI. All right, pre-opening budget and projections. Before you open this business, this is a little worksheet that we have where we talk about some costs you may not think of, right? When you're starting your business, do you have to build something? Are you building a building? Is there construction? Is there engineering? Do you have to paint the place, right? I've had clients that come to see me and they're like, "Hey, I leased this brand new unit inside of a strip mall, and I signed the lease and everything. I didn't really look at it, and they told me it was vanilla shell or gray shell, or they had some certain terminology, and they said I didn't understand it really. And I signed the lease, and then I walked in to see the place, and there's no floor, like it's rocks or dirt, like there's walls, but there's nothing on the floor." And I said, "That's because they expect you to pour the floor. And if you're going to put like let's say a beauty shop in there, you're going to have sinks and that type of stuff." Or it's like it's built. It's kind of like you can customize or build it suit. Or there's construction that has to happen in there. If you're putting in like a little sandwich shop or some sort of a food service, you have to have a certain amount of sewer connections. You have to have a certain amount of hand washing sinks. There needs to be power sufficient for the commercial freezer and refrigerator that you have. If you're frying things, you need to have a grease trap that's installed. There's a lot of extra expenses that you have to put in. Sometimes your landlord will give you an allowance for what's called a build out in what you're doing, but it's important that you allocate funds for this type of activity. There's engineering, there's civil, there's construction that goes with it, there's permitting. So if you have to build or customize something, it's best to find something that works for that. But if you have to change it substantially, there could be some additional expense into there. Now, there's equipment that you have to purchase for your business. You may have to go out and buy $20,000 worth of equipment. That's stuff that you need to really figure out what you need. Leasehold improvements, is there furniture? You're going to have rental deposits. You're going to have utility deposits. If you turn on the lights with NV Energy, they're going to require you to put a deposit in. Southwest Gas will as well. So, Cox Cable will do that, the same thing for your internet. Okay. You also have additional deposits. So those are some deposits. You have additional costs for advertising, for signs. Maybe you have to do mailings, tell people where you're at, just your advertising stuff in general. We've already talked about business licenses and permits. You're going to have to pay your people. If you're opening a restaurant, you're going to have to pay your people for at least a week prior to that you're going through and making your stuff. You're probably going to have some test customers come through. You're going to have opening inventories of food and stuff that you keep in storage to begin with, opening supplies, opening inventory. And then you have to have some kind of reserve for contingencies. You have to have some money sitting aside for when, oh, we need this. Oh, we forgot about this. Here we go. On signage, I brought up a point last time about signage. I had a client that had budgeted $2,500 for a sign, and they were just going to do painted foam and wood sign stuck on the building. Well, they hadn't read their lease agreement completely, and the lease agreement said that they were required to have a neon lit sign that had to be turned on. They had to leave it on all night. So it had to come on at dusk, and it was left on until dawn. So they had to pay that extra power for that. And coincidentally, the landlord that owned this commercial property also owned a sign company. And that was the sign company you had to use per the lease agreement to build the sign. Well, it wasn't $2,500. It was $15,000. So all their extra money they had for working capital had to go into their sign that they hadn't read their lease agreement for. So make sure you're aware, make sure you're reading these agreements and you're budgeting for it. Everything costs twice as much and takes twice as long, literally. If you can plan like that, you'll be okay. So set your expectations a little bit lower, and you probably won't be disappointed in this, right? This is an art and a science, right? So now you've got your startup sources of income too. Any loans that you have, any funds that you have there, if you're borrowing against your retirement fund, if you're financing this on credit card, however you're doing this, you put those in there, and then you see how much you're in a shortfall or what as you're planning for your opening. Now, projections. This is a rudimentary income statement, okay, or profit and loss statement. In this, we show our revenue. What do we project for revenue? If we're a restaurant, I want to look and say, how much in food am I going to project in selling? How much in beverage am I going to sell? If I have a liquor license, how much in alcohol sales do I have? How much in catering do I have? And break those down. Each of those categories has a cost to it. Certain types of food has a food cost to it, and there's a certain percentage. And we know in restaurants, there's certain times because of data. We're talking about NAICS codes earlier, right? You can figure out a restaurant of a certain size needs to be selling a certain amount of money to stay open. And your food cost has to be under a certain percentage in order to stay profitable as you can. So everything that we sell, every product that we sell has a cost to it. So if I sell furniture, I sell wooden chairs. Each wooden chair has a cost to selling that chair, right? After all that cost is taken out of it, we have what's called gross profit, okay? So cost of goods, we call it COGS, cost of goods is basically, it moves with how much we sell. So obviously in a restaurant, when we sell more food, our cost of good is higher in food because it takes more, we're selling that food, we're prepping it and selling it. So that varies with your level of sales. Below, we have all of our expenses. This is what we call overhead, right? This is all the stuff you have to pay no matter what. If you have one customer or 1,000,000 customers, you still have to pay all this overhead, right? So if you open a restaurant and the first day you get 2 people that show up, you still have to pay the power bill. You still have to pay rent, right? They don't care if I mean think about it now. If you have a mortgage payment or you're renting, your landlord doesn't care and your mortgage company doesn't care if you get laid off from your job, right? They don't care how much revenue you have coming in. You have a contract to pay a certain amount per month to them for housing. That's it. That's what it is with these expenses. You have legal fees, you have advertising, you have dues, you have entertainment, you have business licenses. Hey, you got to pay your employees and hopefully you're paying yourself too. Okay. So you have all this stuff. You have to make sure that you're covering that overhead. Quite often people will go, I sold $100 and that's great because it only cost me $50 to make it and I sold it for 100. Isn't that great? Yeah, you have a 50% gross profit, but it's not, you don't have 50% profit. Now you have to take into consideration, how much did it cost you to keep the lights on, keep that place rented, keep your employees working, keep everything done? How much was delivery, travel, expenses, like all these things you have to take into consideration. And if your operating expenses, if your overhead is 55%, you just lost 5%. You mean to sell your product at a higher rate or reduce those expenses or reduce your cost of goods. So it's a little formulation that you have, but you should be able to put this together and say, hypothetically, if I have X amount of revenue, if I have X amount of revenue and X amount of costs, and I keep my expenses at this number, I can predictably have a profit of this. Okay. So if it doesn't make sense on paper to you, if it's not plausible, if you say, I've got a restaurant where it's a small little restaurant. I have 6 tables. I figure I have to sell 300 items a day to break even. That might be a lot. Can you physically produce 300 items a day? Is that plausible? What if you have a bad day? What if you have 25 people come in? Will they, what's the average cost per item? Like you really have to do the numbers on this to see, is this feasible? Is this plausible before you get your business open? And then once you're open, you can look at the actual numbers. How much did I actually sell? How much is this actually costing me to produce? How much is my overhead? And then you can make adjustments to correct any business disparities that you might have. All right, finally, marketing and launch. We've done all this stuff. We've gotten all our compliance done. We've leased our space or gotten our stuff done. Now we got to market this thing, okay? It's the tree that falls in the woods. If nobody's around, did it really make a noise, right? You've heard that analogy before. If no one shows up when you open your doors, that is a total failure for a business owner, right? And it's not only is a failure, it feels like a demoralizing failure, like you have personally just failed, right? So promote it. You should be telling everybody that you know, every person you encounter, you should be talking about your grand opening. You should have a grand opening. I don't care if you're opening an insurance agency. I don't care if it's a call center. You want people to know that you're open and know the type of business that you're in. How do you announce this? Social media. Get on social media. Start promoting your stuff while you're in the planning process, okay? You can pick up clients and customers before you even open your doors. That's what you really want. You can also do this through advertising. You should be advertising. You should have flyers. You should have promotions. You have business cards. You should have posters. You can take out billboards, ads, and you name it. You can have that all done. Public relations is very important. Public relations is advertising is when you pay for it. It's pay for play. I pay an advertising agency, or I pay a publication or someone $1,000 to place my ad there that I create, right? Public relations is I go to the media and I say, You should cover me because of this. We have an interesting story. You know, you should check out Mike's Car Wash. We do this unique thing. And guess what? We employ only veterans. Well, is that unique? Yeah, it's pretty unique for a car wash place. Okay, great. You might get Channel 8 or Channel 3 or Univision to come out and do a piece on you. If you can get that, all of a sudden you've been shown to 100,000 people overnight in the Valley, like what you're doing. And that's a great thing. How do we get public relations? We do stuff, we promote, we do events. I always tell business owners, we live in America, right? We have a holiday every month. Every month in America is a holiday, okay? January, we got New Year's, right? What else we have in February? Valentine's Day. March, we got a few things. We got March Madness. We got St. Patrick's Day, right? Could you do a St. Patrick's Day promotion if you're an insurance agency? Yes. Could you do a March Madness thing if you're a food service place? Yes, absolutely. April, we got Easter. May, we got Mother's Day. We got the start of summer. We got, what's that other holiday in May? Not Labor Day, the other one, Memorial Day. June, summertime, right? You can do a summer solstice celebration, whatever. We got holidays galore, right? July, we got the 4th of July. August, it's back to school. September, we got Labor Day, okay? October, November, December, the trifecta of holidays. You should be killing yourself to promote around these holidays. Hey, it's our special for October. It's our Halloween special. You can be a harvest special. You can be whatever. November, it's Thanksgiving. It can be football playoff times. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff that you can do, okay? But do something. If you don't do this, no one will show up, and that will crush you. We don't want that to happen. Plan for some budget for this. If you're going to have a grand opening, have some food, have some people there, buy some balloons, for goodness sake. Advertise this thing, right? I can't stress enough. You've spent all this time and effort going through the proper licensing procedures to get your business set up. You've built a website, you've done all this stuff, and all of a sudden you open your doors and nobody's there because you failed to promote it properly. That's on you as the small business owner. We don't want that to happen. We want you to be very well prepared so that when you open your doors, you can go, this is awesome. Everybody should know about this and come on down and see us. This is great, right? If you need any help and assistance with this, we have a bunch of videos where we talk about marketing, and we have a few more that we're in the process of making right now. There's always assistance with marketing to help out. Budget some stuff for marketing. Marketing is one of the few functions you pay for in your business, okay, that can return sales, okay? I often tell people, as much as I love accounting and keeping accounting going, if you come down to it and you have to fire your bookkeeper or you have to fire your marketing person, you better fire the bookkeeper, right? You can always do your own bookkeeping. Can you always get sales through the door for marketing? No, you got to get the sales through the door. Nothing happens until you sell something. If sales is the only indicator you have of value in your business, if you open the door and you're not selling something, something is wrong. If you can't sell, you're done. So make sure your marketing is on point. We want you to be successful. We want you to have sustainable prosperity in our community, in our state, and with your family. This is very important. Make sure your marketing is done and on point. I can't stress that enough. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you. This is a lot of information we went through today. You can reach us at extension.unr.edu/BusDev. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us. Thank you for participating. And on behalf of all of us at the Small Business Education Program, I just want to say thank you for listening, and may you be very successful in getting licensed and launched.